Hey there, this is Trevor from the Cobra DFS and Video Game Channel. I'm going to talk with you today about zero RB strategy is dead. And the reason I say that is because, well, first let's start with what is the zero back strategy. That is when you choose a running back. Um, you normally you normally would pick a running back in the third or fourth, even fifth round, and then you would not do that until that point. Before you get to that point, and sometimes even later than the fifth round, you would then uh, you would then pick your running back, say in the seventh or eighth round, and instead of doing picking the running back in the first round, you would load up on wide receivers and tight ends and all of the other different positions that you have available. And the thought process is that you could save yourself the trouble of investing in a high pick running back, and then something happened to them. And one of the schools of thought used to be that was that was just what you did, because conventional wisdom said, oh, that's not a risk you want to take. And because normally in the past, years ago, when fantasy football started, a lot of people would always draft running backs first. And now with the zero running back strategy, the thought process is that you always draft your tight ends and wide receivers and all of your other positions higher than you would a running back. And the reason I say that strategy is now dead is because that we don't live in a time anymore in fantasy football where that it's safe to take a tight end with your third round pick or probably even your fourth round pick. I personally would let my tight end be probably one of my last 6 or 8 picks that I have. So that means I like to take my tight ends very, very, very late. And another reason why that I argue that the zero running back strategy is now flawed is because you look at it in terms of there aren't that many really good workhorse running backs anymore. And so the problem that you run into is that you don't have a lot of good solid running backs that you can count on from week to week. And at such a vital position, it's important to get be able to get a set number of points from a risky position. And it's like a family member of mine told me one time. He said, it's getting to the point where that we're in a passing league now in the NFL, and your wide receivers are becoming more of a dime or dozen type of a commodity now. And so, to me, that brings back in focus some of the retro ways, if you will, that I think are important to look at is the fact that it's very important to have a good solid running back that you can rely on, that you can plug in easily from week to week. And that's something that will help your team in the long run is to have that position that you could count on. And a lot of people don't think that that's something you do anymore, but I argue that the zero running back strategy is an old way of thinking and that we need to change our thought process and get back to realizing just how many times during a football game, because you have to keep in mind that a running back can also catch passes out of the backfield, which as all of you know that have been playing fantasy football for very reception. So you can get even extra points if you have a running back that's great at catching passes out of the backfield. So yet another way of being diversified, if you will. And it's just we have to change our thinking process that it's much easier to get stud wide receivers later than it used to be, because normally the stud wide receiver that you started out with won't be the stud wide receiver that finishes as the leader in fantasy points by the end of the year. So just to kind of recap, I believe the zero running back strategy is dead, and that if you wait too late to draft a running back, you'll put your team at a severe disadvantage in the current landscape of fantasy football. Just because, as we mentioned before, there aren't that many really, really good running backs still available anymore. So this has just kind of been a look at a strategy session, if you will, on fantasy football and some of the inner workings of the zero running back strategy and why that I'm not a fan of it and I don't support it. But, that's the good thing about fantasy football is everybody can do their own thing. But I hope you found this video informative and helpful, and it gives you some things to think about as you get ready for your fantasy football season. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. All right. Thanks again.